Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Charity Trustees. The first thing is we need to agree the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of September. Do members agree that the accuracy of those minutes?
Agreed.
The second item is we have received declarations of interest from members in respect of the matter on the agenda. Are there any? Right. There are none. To consider items that the chairman of the Council Charity Trustees agrees to as urgent business, I have none. I therefore move to the item Beechhurst Gardens Charitable Trust, Haywards Heath, West Sussex, and asked Kevin Toogood to give a brief introduction.
Before Chairman, I think Richard Bates did try to indicate an interest. You could just record that.
Okay, Councillor Bates.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I did flag up, possibly under the declaration of interest. I really wanted to ask a question, as I'm the council's representative for Beechhurst Gardens. But my question really is in general, in as much as there hasn't been a meeting of this group since May, since we've been elected, and I just wondered when there will be a meeting, because we would have perhaps looked at this particular item in Beechhurst and many other items, but there's been no meetings of that group.
So your interest is a member of that group?
I'm the council representative.
Yes.
So I would like to know when we're going to have a meeting.
I can't answer that.
No, we'll have to come back to it.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Bates. Right.
Councillor, to move to Kevin.
I'll move to Kevin.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. This is a matter which relates to the Beechhurst Gardens Charitable Trust and the proposal to grant a new lease of the kiosk at Beechhurst Gardens. It's been drawn to my attention that there's a typo at paragraph 12 of the report. The commencement date of the lease should be January 2024, not January 2023, which is what's set out in the report. Otherwise, I think the report's quite self-explanatory. It's a grant of a lease for a term of 5 years at a rent of £4,000 per annum. Just in relation to the recommendation, you'll note that it's a recommendation subject to the solicitor to the trust, which is me, being satisfied that no objections or representations are received during the relevant period. So the reason for that is we are currently doing our statutory advertisement to make sure that we've satisfied those requirements about our disposal of land. This counts as a relevant disposal. And the purpose of this is to ensure that we've got a decision of the charity trustees in good time to ensure we can grant a lease for January, because otherwise the next meeting of the charity trustees would be after the point where we wanted to grant the lease. So just to say, rest assured, if we do receive any representations, which is unlikely, we didn't the last time, then I'll consider those. And if there are any concerns, then the matter would be reported back. I think that's all I need to say, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
Right, so I will propose this particular motion.
I second this recommendation.
Right, are there any comments or questions from the floor? I see none. So we'll perhaps ask members to vote on the touchscreens on the recommendations listed on page 5.
Thank you, Chairman. So the 41 votes in favour with none against and no abstentions, so the motion is carried.
Right, thank you very much. That is the end of the Charity Trustees meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to the council meeting. First of all, Councillor James Worsley, who was in the past a member of this council and represented my ward, Hurstbeer Point, at that time, passed away in November. I invite members to stand for 1 minute silence in recognition of Councillor.
I think councillor Marsh was going.
Oh, sorry, yes. I invite Councillor Marsh to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I knew James. We were councillors all those years ago. And I don't think there's anybody else. You might. Did you remember? No. I think he got elected about the same time as I did. So, and that was a long time ago. We have lost in touch, and he hasn't been well. So I know that his family and friends would be very touched with the respect which is shown James. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Okay, now I'll call on Councillor Henwood, our
you.
Vice Chairman, to read the opening prayer.
Do we all stand? Please. Thank you. Thank you. O Lord, grant us courage to strive for what is right and good, courtesy to listen to those of different opinion, strengthen us through difficulties and pressures, and guide us in our deliberations, so that we may act in the interests of all in our district, to the glory of your holy name, and give us peace in our world. Amen.
Right, I move now to questions from members of the public. We have 4 questions, and the first question is from Mr. Desmond. Perhaps you would like to give us your question, please.
Good evening. My name is Peter Desmond from Fairer World Linfield. The Council's Sustainable Economy Strategy makes reference to the circular economy on page 7. This is now internationally recognised as an alternative to our current take, make, waste economy. My question is, what specific objectives, targets and action plans is MSDDC developing for the implementation of circular economy principles in order to achieve its Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions and the UN Sustainable Development Goals objectives outlined in Annex 1 in the Sustainable Economy Strategy?
Right, I ask Cabinet Member Councillor Gibson for a small reply.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Desmond, and thank you for drawing my attention to your related question to this Council in 2021. Since then, the Council has adopted a Sustainable Economy Strategy, which is this Council's response to the need for effective change to address the challenges of climate change, achieving net zero and economic resilience. The Sustainable Economy Strategy, the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the concept of a circular economy are closely interconnected, as all aim to address global challenges and promote sustainable development, environmental, social and economic. The strategy sets out 14 objectives within the 3 themes of people, place and partnerships, the actions that this council is taking to deliver these objectives, and the measures of success being used are set out in the appendices to the strategy. To a greater or lesser extent, all of the objectives represent a holistic response to the need to reduce the council's Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. The relationship between the strategy's objectives and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals is more nuanced, as illustrated by the objectives which align with UN Goal 12. These include encouraging local businesses to adopt sustainable practices, ensuring that the appropriate infrastructure is in place, and reducing carbon emissions. Specific examples are the introduction of EV charging points in our car parks and our leadership in the county on food waste collection. The strategy has recently completed its first year, and progress on these objectives was reported to the Scrutiny Committee, Place and Environment, at its meeting in October. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Desmond, do you have a supplementary question?
I do.
Right, please.
Brighton and Hove Council, together with Brighton Chamber and other stakeholders, has established Brighton and Hove Loop, along with support from Caroline Lucas MP, to support their businesses in their transition to a circular economy. Is this an initiative that could be replicated in Mid-Sussex with support of Mims Davis MP, businesses, chambers of commerce, community action groups such as Fair World, Linfield and other stakeholders? If so, how could this be actioned?
Could the Cabinet member give a written answer? Unless he wants to say something now.
I'll provide a written response. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Gibson. Okay, we now move to the second question from Mr. Lang Long. You can give your question.
Thank you. Climate Emergency UK's Climate Action Scorecards offer an analysis of the achievements and gaps in relation to each UK council's performance across 7 areas of council responsibility. MSDC Climate Action performance up to 31st March 2023 gave an overall ranking below the national average, an incredibly low national average in some sections. The 80+ questions posed in the scoring process and comparisons with similar district councils offer inspiration and ideas for future council climate action. Is MSDC making use of this helpful information to improve its performance? Time for effective change is running out at an increasingly alarming pace.
Thank you. And I ask Councillor Gibson again, the Cabinet member for this area, for a response.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Lang Long. The Climate Action Scorecards provide a quantitative assessment of how well individual councils are performing in terms of their climate change actions, such as reducing carbon emissions and adopting sustainable infrastructure practices. The scorecards have been in place for 2 years, and during that time, this council has improved its score by 12%. This means our score for 2023 is above the national average for district councils in England. In fact, we are above the national average for district councils in 4 of the 7 assessment categories, and our score for biodiversity was 60%, the 4th highest score for all district councils. I think this demonstrates the council's commitment to taking climate action and that we use all available resources to achieve this. The council's ambitions to improve its performance are clearly set out in the Sustainable Economy Strategy, which was approved by the council in 2022. That includes 52 actions, and progress was reported to the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee in October, just past. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you. Just to clarify that actually the first scorecards were based on climate action plans, and the second were on climate action implementation. Sorry, that is just a clarification. The desperately slow progress on implementing the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement has been heavily influenced by vested interests and a lack of political will. The current draft of the revised district plan offers some welcome changes and additions, but by the time it is submitted to the planning inspector, it will already be nearly a year since CEUK gave MSDC a score of only 19% on planning and land use, MSDC's area of greatest potential influence on carbon emissions. In what ways will MSDC work to impact developers' decision-making between now and the plan's final adoption?
In this situation, we'll give you a written reply to your question. Thank you. Right, Mr. Kenwood, can you give your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the licence to occupy Clare Hall held by the Alliance for Better Care coming to an end on the 29th of February 2024, and any decision on the building's future seemingly a long way off, what plans do Mid-Sussex District Council have for a vacant Clare Hall during any interim period whilst we wait for any decision to be made?
Right, and I call upon Cabinet Member Councillor Cook for a response.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Kenwood. As you all know, Clare Hall has continued to be used for the vaccination programme this autumn and early winter. Our health partners will be seeking to discuss their 2024 plans later this month. It is currently anticipated that they will seek the continued use of Clare Hall for additional health service capacity. We expect to continue to support them with this for the benefit of the residents of Haywards Heath and Mid-Sussex.
Right, and you have a supplementary question?
I do. Perhaps you can satisfy my curiosity. I'm no planning expert. However, as far as I'm aware, I think any continued use is possibly a breach of your own planning rules and regulations. Would the member please be kind enough to send me the legislation or government guidelines that would allow this continued occupation, please?
I will get back to you. Thank you.
So there'll be a written response here. Thank you. And now I call on Miss Wilcock, unfortunately, is unable to be here, so I therefore would read out her question and then get a reply from the Cabinet member. So the question from Miss Wilcox is, following the submission of the interim BOP report in June 2022, what is the council budget for the further work since carried out by consultants and for the work from the panel of experts and any other consultants or external advisors appointed in relation to Clare Hall anticipated this financial year? And I call on Councillor Cook to reply.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Ms. Wilcock, if you're watching. As you may know, a budget of £185,000 was agreed at Cabinet in December last year, 2022. We are not anticipating any new budget provision this financial year. The work to carry out the community engagement in the summer, as well as the assessment of community proposals by the independent panel to come, will be delivered from this budget.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, that ends the public questions. So the next item on the agenda is to agree the minutes of the council held on the 20th of September 2023. Do we all verbally agree with those minutes? Agreed. Right. I will sign those in due course. 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Members to indicate their mics, please. Calling it Ian Gibson, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was contacted by the monitoring officer at 5:15 this afternoon and advised that I should not participate in agenda item 7 and should leave the chamber. I have not had time to seek independent advice, and as the advice of the monitoring officer is itself prejudicial, I will do as he has advised.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So we move to item 5, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. Item 6, the chairman's announcements. Since the meeting in September, which seems a long time ago, I've been quite busy. I've visited a number of organisations, for example, the West Sussex Scouts AGM, and there they reported that the numbers have recovered since the pandemic, but there's always a shortage of adult leaders, which is true across all youth organisations across the district. I also had a report from representatives who went to South Korea to the International Scout Jamboree. They had a great experience, not as they expected in terms of an enormous jamboree camp, because of the very hot weather and the impending typhoons. They decamped into hotels, but they still had a good time around Seoul, the capital of South Korea. Also various civic services at Horsham and the County Council service in Chichester Cathedral, with inspiring the STEM launch, where there are youngsters from the various secondary schools on the start of a science project. We went to Lancing College, where the Lord Lieutenant provided awards to cadets and volunteers. Interesting across the voluntary sector, we get to at the AGM of Citizens Advice to hear the great work that they do. Very interesting was the handover of keys from the builders to the management of St Catherine's Hospice in Pease Pottage, a very, very new and well-equipped facility which will benefit the residents of our district. Also interesting was the High Sheriff's Judges ceremony, again in Chichester, where we had judges and then police constable and then magistrates and coroners, all in their wigs and gowns. It was quite an occasion. Also was invited to Advent Vespers at Arundel Cathedral by the Catholic Bishop of Brighton and Arundel. Finally, my own civic service, or the Civic Service of Mid Sussex, on Sunday the 10th of December, kindly hosted by the Holy Trinity Church in Hurstbury Point. We were joined by the Vice Lord Lieutenant, the High Sheriff and the Chief Executive of Winston's Wish, along with the retiring collection from the civil service. A further £100 has been raised by officers on Christmas Jumper Day. So that was a good occasion, and I thank those members of the council who joined me on that day. Finally, after the full proceedings this evening, members are also invited to join me for refreshments in the committee room at the conclusion of this meeting. I thank you. Now we move to agenda item 7, District Plan 2021 to 2039, Regulation 19. And we'll just wait for Councillor Gibson to leave us. Okay, this particular item is proposed by Councillor John Belsey, so I welcome, ask John Belsey to speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been asked to propose the recommendations before us this evening as they came forward from the Scrutiny Committee for Place and Environment, the meeting which I chaired on 22nd of November 2023. However, of course, that meeting and tonight's are just the latest culmination of work which started back under the previous administration in 2021, when Mid Sussex District Council started its district plan review with its call for sites and evidence-based gathering. Many of us in the council chamber will remember that work commencing. And of course, since then, we've had the Regulation 18 consultation late last year, and the plan has also gone to scrutiny committee, noting those comments earlier this year. This year's also seen changes made to the draft plan following the engagement carried out with town and parish councils, the reviews undertaken from the cross-party member working group, the additional work undertaken by officers to tighten up the policies in the plan, and then some additional changes agreed at last month's scrutiny committee, which following good and robust discussions, which are also detailed in the reports. And thank you very much to all the officers and to all the members who've contributed to the work involved with the plan, taking us to this point this evening, whereby I hope we have a draft plan that all of us across parties and representing the various areas of Mid Sussex within the council chamber tonight are able to support. No plan is ever going to be perfect, and I'm sure all of us might wish for individual changes to specific policies and sites. However, we have to come up with a draft plan that will be enforceable, legally tight, and to reach consensus across the chamber. Crucially, we need to ensure Mid Sussex remains a district that can demonstrate it meets its housing need, reducing the risk of speculative development and speculative development planning applications being successful. We don't have to look very far to see other districts and boroughs who don't have an up-to-date district plan and who are bombarded with such speculative development which rightly upsets their local communities. Alongside the certainty of having allocated sites, of course, we're also able to impose policy requirements to ensure site-specific mitigation and to seek to ensure the infrastructure and facilities are in place to support that housing development. And of course, it's the case that individual planning applications still have to come forward in respect of allocated sites to demonstrate this. Underpinning all this is the need for our council to present to our residents, and indeed future residents, our businesses and future businesses, a positive vision for the future of Mid Sussex, that it will remain a vibrant place to live and work, and which is full of communities where people are happy to live. Essential to this is the need to protect and enhance our environment too, as far as possible, alongside and within our new developments. In respect to the position taken by members in respect to the development of the district plan, I always try to have our communities, residents and businesses at the forefront of my mind, and I'm sure many of my colleagues, if not all of them, seek to do the same. As things stand, and having listened to the scrutiny debates, seen the outcomes of the engagement earlier this year, and with the changes made since the previous draft, I feel now is the right time to move to the next stage of the plan, and therefore I'm pleased to propose recommendations before us this evening, including submitting the draft district plan out for consultation for a 6-week period commencing in January 2024. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you have a seconder for this and Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to thank you, got my microphone on, sorry. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Scrutiny Committee for Place and Environment, and particularly the working group of that committee for helping us get to this place. The working group of which I had the privilege and pleasure of chairing. The input and the constructive criticism from the very knowledgeable members of the working group and with the unconditional support that we had from the officers was very helpful in producing a very clear and rigorous plan. And I think we all felt the benefit of that last month when the council was briefed. That meeting was very productive and congenial and expertly chaired by Councillor Belsey and with the support of the officers. Everyone here is aware that the standard method, which is based on data from 2011, actually means that our district has more house building than might reasonably be expected. We look forward to a revision of that, but we don't expect any radical changes, especially as there's been some changes at national level at least, such as the attempt to relax the laws on nutrient neutrality. In an ideal world, everyone would like to see the policies being tightened to put more onus on house builders to deliver sustainable communities with solar panels and electric vehicle charging points and the like. but sadly, we don't live in an ideal world yet. And so in conclusion, and acknowledging that many of us here, not just the Greens, would like to see greener policies being enacted, I'd like to thank the council and in particular the officers for the very hard work that's been done over the past 2 years. I second the motion and offer our support.
Thank you. I now invite members for contributions to the debate. Councillor Marsh.
I'm back. Thank you, Chairman. I am going to be speaking in support of this recommendation to go out to consultation. I was in the Cabinet when this document, the first one, 2014, this I think is the single most important document that I've had the privilege to work on in the last 20 years as a district councillor. This gave protection across the whole of the district, because there was a horrible time when we had no district plan and no 5-year land supply, and we had thousands and thousands of unplanned houses. So as you can see, it's quite a substantial document. I'm going to grow. This is what I call the son of the district plan. This was the DPD. As a result of this, we were told we had to produce this. It's got bigger, as most children tend to. Finally today, this is what I call the grandfather of the district plan. This is probably the best document I've seen for a very, very long time. It is basically, as Councillor Belsey said, it's essentially the previous administration, but I'm glad to say there have been some really good tightening up of the policies and some new policies being put in place. So therefore, I cannot see why anybody would not want to support this for the whole benefit of the district. Now, we do have issues, as Councillor Belsey said. Last time, I had quite a few in my ward, which now that's down to Councillor Prescott to deal with now. But suffice to say, we've done a flipping good job, and I'd like to thank the working group for their work to get us through. I'd like to thank Councillor Belsey and the Scrutiny Committee, because there were some very good comments made, and the officers did take on board those comments, hence the fact we've got this. So I shall be voting for this, because this is the right thing to do for our district. Thank you, Chairman.
Now I call on Councillor Henwood.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, having been on the initial working party looking at the proposed draft district plan, I am particularly supportive of how the new policies have progressed and addressed the issues around our changing district and world. The language is robust. New policies addressing sustainability, natural environment and green infrastructure, countryside, built environment, transport, economy, housing, infrastructure. The language is now robust. Replacing words such as should and will expect with strong and robust words. If we look at, for instance, DPS 1, climate change, quote, development will be required. If we look at DP 3, renewable and low carbon energy schemes, applications must address all the following. If we look at DP 1, infrastructure provision, infrastructure must be provided. DPN, biodiversity, geodiversity, and nature recovery, quote, all development must ensure the protection and enhancement of biodiversity. Strong language and robust. And I would also like to thank the officers for listening and taking on board some of the councillors' suggestions. I fully support this. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. I call on Councillor Zeidler.
Thank you very much. Chair, I'd just like to make a brief, clarification, if I may, because I was a member of the working group. And at the time, there was great concern about the fact that the NPPF may well be changing. And of course, the impact of the NPPF, if it does change, is that it is immediate. It doesn't require secondary legislation. Now, at the working group, when we asked about how that would be accommodated within the Reg 19, particularly if it potentially affected the numbers of houses. And in this area, we were particularly talking about the possibility of exceptions. Officers provided us advice that no exceptions were expected that would make a change. But equally, that if it did occur, then there was a mechanism that allowed for that to be accommodated within the process. I raise this question again quite simply because it seems, and I think the Deputy Director previously said, that a change to the NPPF is imminent. And some of the speculation in housing market circles is that the exceptions may extend to agricultural land, green spaces, and other areas, and therefore may actually lead to the opportunity for this council to reduce some of its housing requirement within the NPPF, and I emphasise that that has always been the focus of this plan and will remain so. And I was just really wishing to ask whomever appropriate, I guess the portfolio holder, to just reconfirm that that is the case and that we can progress and agree to progress with this plan, confident in the fact that if there are reasonable opportunities that we can take advantage of, that we will be able to do so.
Right, I call on Councillor Eggleston just to reply to that point.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I thank you, Councillor Zeidler, for raising the issue. It is it's like waiting for a child to be born with the revised NPPF. The reality is that our plan is out of date and we are running on fumes when it comes to our 5-year land supply. Our advice is that the changes to the NPPF are unlikely to have any impact on our plan making, nor any changes to the standard method for calculating housing need, and no changes to the commitment to deliver 300,000 homes per year across the country. So the benefits of carrying on with this process are that if we have our plan in place, then we can take advantages of what we believe will come out of the NPPF, so fixing our 5-year land supply and not being at risk on the buffer requirement. So they are benefits. The disincentive of not proceeding is that we will not have a plan because we are currently out of our plan. Now, if the NPPF throws up some changes that we can take advantage of and can take advantage of immediately, then of course we will do that.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I was part of the Scrutiny Committee last year under the previous administration, which approved the district plan update to proceed to Regulation 18, and also the recent working group. It is welcome to see the district plan update reach this latest stage after detailed analysis, review and discussion by officers and councillors of the Regulation 18 submissions. It's another important step in securing the district plan, our 5-year land supply, and providing continued certainty and stability to our residents and also developers. It was good to see the cross-party working group work productively together, enhancing policies where it was thought relevant and continuing with the previously selected sites after having reviewed the Regulation 18 submissions and the well-established site selection process and protocols. I look forward to the motion being approved tonight, allowing the start of Regulation 19 and urge all members to support the recommendations. As many of us know, the successful adoption of the updated district plan for the period up to 2038, which will hopefully occur later in 2024, will ultimately avoid unwanted speculative development, the lack of infrastructure provision that is usually its consequence, planning by appeal, and therefore uncertainty for our residents. And I'd just like to thank the Scrutiny Committee, fellow working group members and the officers for their work. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll call on Councillor Mear.
Thank you, Chair. Can the leader assure me, as the local ward councillor, that in adjacent to the west of Burgess Hill allocation, Burgess Hill in the last plan experienced the greatest number of houses, noticeably the northern arc and in the east of the town? To give an example, my daily driving journey from Royal George Road to the station, which previously used to be only 4 to 5 minutes, and now it's taking 20 to 25 minutes. The roads get congested. We were promised that infrastructure would follow as a result. Since May, nothing seems to be happening. I will be supporting the plan, as it is essential to protect the whole of the district. Can you give myself and the council an update, please?
Thank you. Move to Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want, if you could come back and clarify, do you mean infrastructure generally in Burgess Hill or on Brookley?
No, sorry, in Burgess Hill generally.
Thank you for that. Oh, excuse me. So, as you're probably aware, what we are trying to do with this plan and indeed the existing plan, where we have areas of housing growth such as Burgess Hill, which is always been identified as such, is by way of infrastructure for transport infrastructure is all about, or not all about, but considerably about modal shift. So creating sustainable communities and providing a choice of transport provision. So, for example, as Brookley rolls out, part of the infrastructure investment for Brookley is investment in bus provision, public transport provision. So by the time that phase 4 is rolled out for Brookley, there will be a bus into Burgess Hill every 12 minutes. It's also about providing choice of travel, so improving pathways for pedestrians and cyclists to improve connectivity from the edge of town into the centre of town. Of course, as a town grows, there will be more traffic, but what we're trying to do in this plan, as indeed in the previous plan, is to build in infrastructure which gives people choice. And as you know, because where your restaurant is, we have completed some work through the centre of Burgess Hill that improves capacity for pedestrians and cyclists. More of that work will continue. We are about to roll out phase 2 of that, which will be real-time passenger transport information so that we can be ready for the bus service when it's rolled out later on.
Thank you. I've had advice, and of course, in terms of Councillor Zeidler, you can only ask a point of explanation or point of order, not have further contribution to the debate.
Thank you. That's unfortunate that I wasn't aware perhaps of that, and I was just wishing to make a short statement reflecting the fact, and maybe this is a point of explanation, that I am a new district councillor elected in May and stood on the basis of opposing overdevelopment and limiting it in Downham Villages ward for which I stand. That I'm one of 48 councillors in this council, and Downham Villages in this plan allocates 3,748 of the plan houses to that one ward. That's 50%, 56% of all the housing. In a ward recently created this year called Downland Villages to reflect the rural nature of this particular district council. As such, this plan is very difficult for me personally and for the residents, as it is for many. However, I've been an active member of the Scrutiny Committee and of the working group, and notwithstanding this position, I am going to be voting for it tonight because I do support the plan. I do believe that it's the right plan for the district. I think it's a necessary plan for the district under the government's current regulations. I think it may not be the nicest plan or the best plan, but it is the soundest plan. And therefore, I would advocate every single member in the difficult situation we find ourselves to take responsibility for supporting the plan, because I think collectively that is the best thing to do in our responsibility. And if that's a clarification, I hope that's
Thank you, Councillor.
allowed.
Okay, Councillor de Bell.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I'm delighted that we are at the end of a long road on this one, because and I'm pleased with what Councillor Henwood feels, that it's at last meets the things that we were discussing last year, because we can all heave a sigh of relief on this one, because Lord knows we talked it over so much over a period of time, and I personally I'm looking forward to us at last, for the reasons of safety for the people in our communities locally, that we will hopefully, may it please the Lord, have a neighbourhood plan. Thank you. A district plan, sorry. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Eggleton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to add my thanks to all those who have worked on this document across all parties, the senior officers, and all of the many, many officers not present who have worked so hard to bring this draft before us this evening. In particular, I'd like to focus on one opportunity presented by this process that we have all made the most of, namely in relation to first homes. Not everyone is as fortunate as so many of us have been in our lives. Home ownership is falling ever further out of the reach of our population, especially those of us who are millennials or Gen Z. The often used metaphor is of a ladder being pulled up right in front of our eyes. Either the deposits are too difficult to accumulate, or interest rates are too high to afford the mortgage payments. And not everyone has access to the proverbial bank of mum and dad. It has been incumbent upon all of us to do all we can to ensure that our people aren't forced to leave the district that they love just so they can afford a roof over their heads. To do otherwise risks the sustainability of our communities. It would have been too easy for this council to overlook this issue, but we have all tackled it head on, and that is something to be extremely proud of. The first homes criteria are good and show that we are trying to do our bit to give our residents the security and the reassurance that home ownership offers. This will give our qualifying residents a sense of ownership of their district. And that can only be a good thing for this community, and I would say even in this chamber. The inclusion criteria for those qualifications are really good and will allow our residents, including those that you could describe as lapsed residents who tried living elsewhere but found the forces of gravity brought them back home to us to fully qualify. The construction of a feedback loop so that we can optimize those criteria over time to maximize its benefits is a fundamentally good innovation, and I congratulate the working group on its development and the officers. It's tough to leave mid-Sussex, and let's be honest, who would really want to? Our fundamentals are so good, and I'm glad that we have added this provision just so that our residents can stay in the district that they love so much. I shall be voting for the motion, and I encourage all my colleagues across all parties to do the same. Thank you.
Okay, call on Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I too will be enthusiastically voting for the motion. I particularly want to highlight the work that has been done by so many in producing a plan that has got an exciting series of innovations and building upon issues in connection with the environment. It's particularly good to see that there is increasing provision for some of the species, dormice, bats, birds, hedgehogs, all mentioned within our local plan and taking into account the natural world around us. And we are fortunate to live in such a beautiful part of the country. I particularly am grateful for seeing the inclusion in so much of the thinking of the UN Sustainability Goals. I think they will give us a measure of progress and a challenge to help us progress as a council. There is much still to do, but this is a good roadmap and it points us in the right direction to help improve and conserve our beloved environment. Thank you.
Right, thank you. As there are no further offers to speak on this debate, I'll then go back to the proposer, Councillor Belsey, and invite him to make any further comments in response to the debate.
Thank you, Chairman. No further comments. Thank you.
Finally, I will go to the portfolio leader on planning, Councillor Eccleston.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you all for your contributions this evening, which has been really useful. I hope you don't mind, Councillor Zeidler, but I do want to particularly commend you on your remarks, because I think for publicly brave in what you said, and I think for all of us making this decision tonight, we make it soberly, understanding that this does impact on communities, but the plan does, as far as we are able to, within the constraints of the law, protect communities as much as possible. And the officers who, and I add my thanks to everybody else's who've worked so hard, we will, as officers and members, continue to work with our communities that will be affected by development to deliver the best result for them as far as we are able to. I think we demonstrated that remarkably well in the process between Regulation 18 and Regulation 19 to show that we did have listening ears. So here we are with a decision to make. Mid Sussex is a district with a growing population. That is a simple demographic fact. It gives us our annual housing need requirement, which informs the district plan. It's a number. But this district plan is so much more than a number. It is a suite of policies that will help to guide and control development within the district. It is a plan that is about people. People who want somewhere to live and work, get a foot on the housing ladder, raise families, get off the housing waiting list, or enjoy their later years of life, possibly with assisted living. Homes for people who need homes. It is about place, building safe and sustainable communities which can provide for everyday needs, whilst at the same time ensuring that essential connections between places are provided in a sustainable way. It's a place which is committed to net zero. It is about investment, ensuring we secure the financial contributions we need to make the places where people live rich in the infrastructure they need, as well as providing resources to the wider community. And it is about landscape, nature, and the environment. This district is 88% rural. It will be 86% rural at the end of the plan period. But crucially, we have identified more land outside of the AONB which cannot be developed. We will be making more countryside open and accessible. We protect our ancient woodland, drive improvements in a key range of biodiversity indicators, and build biodiversity net gain into the heart of the plan. This plan may not be perfect, but we should never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It is a good plan, robust, evidence-based, well considered with strong policies and defendable in examination. I commend it to you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to request a recorded vote on this because I think it's that important. Thank you, Chairman.
This request needs to be supported by 5 members, so could raise their hand if they want to. Obviously, we've got more than 5 members. Thank you very much. So we will proceed to a recorded vote, and I will hand over to Mr. Thorpe Harrogod to deal with that.
Thank you, Chairman. So as I read your names out, if you could please operate your microphones and then indicate whether you're for, against or abstain for the motions that are set out in the papers, please. So starting with Councillor Avery.
For.
Bashar. Bates. Belsey John.
For.
Belsey Margaret.
For.
Bennett.
For.
Bergrin. Brown.
For.
Carvalho.
For.
Casella. Chapman.
Against.
Cherry.
For.
Clark.
For.
Cook.
For.
Cornish.
For.
DeBell.
For.
Edwards.
For.
Eggleston.
For.
Eggleton.
For.
Ellis.
For.
Eves.
For.
Farron.
For.
Gibson, not here. Hatton. Henwood.
For.
Hicks.
For.
Hitchcock.
For.
Hobbs.
For.
Hussain.
For.
Jackson.
For.
Kennedy.
For.
Kenny.
For.
Lucraft.
For.
Marsh.
For.
Mia.
For.
Pascoe.
For.
Peacock.
For.
Phillips.
For.
Prescott.
For.
Rees.
For.
Russell.
For.
Sweatman.
For.
Whitaker.
For.
Wood.
For.
Zeidler.
For.
Thank you. That's the recorded vote concluded with 1 vote against, the remaining in favour. So that motion is carried. Thank you.
Yes. I should like to thank members for their contributions on this important matter. And now we can move on to the next item on the agenda, item 8. This item is proposed by Councillor Hicks. It's the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2024, 25, 26, 27.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to recommend the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy, including the additions following the discussions of the Audit Committee, which aim to strengthen and clarify our commitments to seeking investments which represent our environmental, social and governance aspirations. This will underline that the Council will actively seek to invest in organisations that minimise their impact on the environment when placing any investment with current or new counterparties. The Council, through its service level agreement with Ada Whirling, will continue to actively monitor markets for new investments that meet this criteria. At the same time, it remains committed to ensuring any actions do not jeopardise the Council's invested capital, cause any other undue financial risk, or adversely affect yields. We can be pleased that windfall income, as a result of high interest rates and effective investment decision-making, has enabled us to utilise this funding to offset pressures on services that continue to be impacted by high inflation. Therefore, I propose this motion.
Okay, I call upon Councillor Cook. Second.
Thank you. I'm pleased to support this motion and I'll reserve my right to speak.
invite debate. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Chairman. I too am in support of the strategy, and I just wanted to draw, as Councillor Hicks has already, but in with regard to section 9 in the background part of the recommendations, I just really would like to thank officers for strengthening this part of the investment strategy, which now aligns more closely with our sustainable economy strategy. And obviously it sounds like there's a theme here this evening, but I think this is a really good example of how a greener approach can help reduce our carbon footprint indirectly as well as directly for the council. Thanks very much.
Right, Councillor Cook, have anything further to say?
No, thank you.
Okay, we now move to the vote. If you could use your touchpads. Okay.
Councillor
Green.
has done it now.
Okay.
Go.
Right, the result of that is the 45 votes in for, no abstentions, none against, so it's passed. Now we move on to item 9, recommendation from Cabinet on the 13th of November 2023, proposed by Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move the recommendations from Cabinet for the 13th of November 2023, the Budget Management 2023 for Progress Report for the Q1 to June 23. The three recommendations there. If I may move at the same time the recommendations from the Budget Management Report for Q2 to September 2023 as well, the three recommendations there.
Seconded, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second, but would like to reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Are any contributions from the rest of the council? No. See none. Come back to Councillor Bennett.
Happy to second, Chairman.
Right, I think we go to the vote now. We can vote on our touch screens. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. That is carried unanimously, 45 votes in favour, none against, no abstentions.
Okay, thank you very much. We move now on to item 10 on the agenda to receive the Leaders' Report. Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a few things to report. An update on the Gatwick Airport submission. This council submitted our relevant representation in October. These are available to view on the Planning Inspectorate website. PINS, having taken into account the pressures of Crawley's local plan examination and other DCOs, including Rampion 2 wind farm, have decided to delay the start of the examination process. Work is progressing with our consultants on the council's local impact report, which will set out in detail how the DCO application will impact on Mid-Sussex. GAL are proposing 3 amendments to their application, but none of them are significant to us. Firstly, some design changes to the Northern Terminal Departure Lounge extension. Secondly, a reduction in height and the purpose of the recycling facility. GAL want this to be a waste sorting facility rather than an incinerator, and the creation of a reed bed solution to treat contaminated storm water. GAL will be consulting on these changes for 6 weeks starting today before submitting the proposed changes to the Planning Inspectorate. These proposed changes are unlikely to impact this district or the overall timetable for the DCO, but this will be a decision for the examining authority. I was going to update on the NPPF, but it came up in the debate on the district plan. But just a small piece of clarification, if I may. When the revisions come out, it is very likely that there will be transitional arrangements in place for plan making. So those will not be immediate, but for planning applications, the changes to the NPPF will have immediate effect. Burgess Hill Town Centre, just to update, officers are continuing to actively work with New River and other stakeholders to support redevelopment of the town centre. Members will be aware from my previous reports on this matter that progress is slow. There's a lot of investment uncertainty still out there, and inflation and supply chain issues make this project as demanding as it ever was. The council, as you know, holds the reversionary freehold, but the centre itself is owned on a long lease by New River. So whilst we are not without tools, our influence is limited. However, we continue to do all we can to bring this project forward. As you'll know from the previous meeting, we had the active travel motion, and as requested, I wrote to the leader of West Sussex County Council. The letter was published on our MIS. Councillor Paul Marsh, leader of the County Council, responded on the 10th of November, confirming his support to secure active travel infrastructure through our plan making. We've just approved the Regulation 19 draft. Thank you very much for that. On the 15th of November, we also responded to the active travel strategy and local cycling and walking infrastructure plan consultation. Our response urges West Sussex County Council to include active travel routes in Mid-Sussex and to actively work with us to develop routes in the district. We also promoted the consultation to our communities through our communications platform. We will continue to work with the County Council, landowner and developers to deliver active travel solutions. And of course, as you know, the Regulation 19 draft includes considerable emphasis on sustainable transport solutions across the district. There was also the motion on care leavers, and as requested, officers have followed up the motion and are actively working with West Sussex County Council colleagues to explore options for a hub facility for care leavers. We are also hoping that we will be able to build on stronger links with West Sussex County Council to support those at risk of homelessness. And then finally, the West Sussex Economic Forum. Over the past 2 months, either I or my deputy and the CEO or the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainable Economy have participated in 4 West Sussex-wide economic forums, building on the research conducted by Metro Dynamics. The areas covered included skills and training, economic growth, sustainability, particularly the need to reach net zero, and connectivity, both from a digital and transport perspective. These forums will help guide county-wide policy development in these areas. It was particularly gratifying to see Burgess Hill Business Parks Association, Haywards Heath Business Association and East Grinstead Business Association well represented at all 4 forums, and I think it would be fair to say that the representation from Mid-Sussex was an exemplar for the rest of the county. Happy to take questions.
Any questions to Councillor Eggleston? Oh, I've none. Right.
Do you think I could just...
Sorry, Councillor Mear, yes.
Sorry. Do you think I could just... You know, you get a question and it sort of bugs you. Thank you, Chairman. And then you just want to say it and get it clarified. So I just said thank you for your report, Mr. Leader, Robert. Can I ask, when you were in opposition, you refused to support the DPD to keep our 5-year land supply to such an extent. You made the council come in during August at the cost of, for the taxpayers, nearly £10,000. Then at the Regulation 18 stage, you campaigned in Burgess Hill against the modernisation of our railway station and the loss of unofficial allotments. You even asked me to speak to then the Conservative leader of Mid-Sussex District Council, Jonathan Ash Edwards, and my colleagues not to support the allotment being added in the district plan. I hope you remember this. So can I ask, what has changed, please? Thank you.
Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Mear. Just like to remind you that you have also just voted for the district plan. Evidence. So just to explain, the evidence changed. So and it's in the public domain. If you look at the One Public Estate report, where it's quite clear that in the original plan for the Burgess Hill site, that Network Rail found that it wasn't feasible to bring forward that site for development, which is why they began to look at the allotment site. And you have a situation, Councillor Mear, where you have 2 policies in the neighbourhood plan which are in conflict with each other. And you have to resolve that conflict, A, on the basis of evidence, and B, on the basis of how many people do you help the most, right? Burgess Hill is a housing growth area. It's also an employment growth area. Over the lifetime of the district plan, we will add 15,000 jobs in Burgess Hill, okay? No one, I think, is going to tell any of us that a station that was built in the 1870s, which has hardly seen any change, is fit for the 21st century with all of that housing growth and all of that employment growth. So who do we help most? In terms of redeveloping the Burgess Hill station, we will support not just employers, but people who are using that station to commute or for social purposes. What we've also been able to do in this Regulation 19 draft is we've been able to include an allotment site, which will be statutory allotments, which will be larger than the site that it will replace, that will provide security for allotment holders, which they do not have at the moment, which will reduce the allotment waiting list in Burgess Hill. Now, it strikes me that if you've got a proposal like that on the table, a good proposal which invests in transport infrastructure in Burgess Hill, protects allotment holders and enables people who are waiting for an allotment to get off the waiting list, you'd grab that with both hands, wouldn't you?
Right, are there any more questions? Right, let's move on. Jeff Zyder. No, Councillor Zyder, yes.
Thank you very much. It's just a question about New River. And I have family who live in Burgess Hill, and obviously I think we all feel about the lack of development that's been seen there, and understand the challenges of putting some pressure on them. But reading the recent annual reports of the New River Real Estate Investment Trust, which is actually doing really quite well, holds this as one of its 3 development portfolios, has not written any of the money down, has money available, cites that it's looking to sell the housing rights to build 187 houses to someone else to build them, and has a hotel ready. I'm not exactly sure what the authority is within this council, but shouldn't this council be a shareholder of that investment trust, and then go to that investment trust and ask it to try and take more attention to making something out of its redevelopment portfolio?
Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Councillor Zyder, for your question. That's an investment decision which I couldn't possibly answer. We have a treasury management policy. You're probably aware that the way publicly quoted companies are run, that in terms of developing, liquidating or acquiring assets, those decisions are made not by shareholders, they're made by the board of directors, and I've been on the board of many companies. So just having some shares wouldn't deliver what I understand you're looking for us to achieve is, leverage through a shareholders meeting to affect the change that you want. Publicly quoted companies don't work on that basis, I'm afraid. All I can say, and will reiterate, that officers are turning themselves inside out, trying to bring this redevelopment forward. But we are not in control of events. We can influence them, but we are not in control of them. But we are doing all we can. I would like finally to add, and I know an email's gone out, we will be inviting the leaders and the deputy leaders of the other parties, plus Councillor Kenny and Councillor Chapman, to a confidential briefing early in the new year, so that we can update them on where we are and what some of the challenges are.
Right, thank you. Right, finally, are there any more questions? No. No, well, perhaps thank you very much. We move now to Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for Communities and Communications, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everyone, and may I wish you all a happy Christmas when the time comes. Speaking of Christmas, it is a really busy time of year for everyone, so it would be brilliant if you could let groups in your communities know that applications are open until the 2nd of January to apply for a community grant. This is the first round of grant giving that will be using our updated criteria. We have linked our grant scheme to the Council's Sustainable Economy Strategy by asking applicants to consider which of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals the grant will support. So do remind people to apply, and hopefully their applications won't get forgotten about over Christmas and they will get submitted. Moving on, the Mid-Sussex Partnership. Mid-Sussex remains the only council in West Sussex to maintain a structure that coordinates partnership work in community safety, health and well-being, and community development. This is known as the Mid-Sussex Partnership and is overseen by the Mid-Sussex Partnership Board, which is ably chaired by the leader. Membership of the board is from our local government partners, the County Council, town and parishes, the Blue Light Services, the voluntary sector, housing partners, education and the business community. The board agrees priorities for the district and commissions work to improve the quality of life here. During the autumn, the work of the Mid-Sussex Partnership was reviewed and the recommendations were agreed at our meeting in November, and it was agreed that we would further invest in the analysis that enables the board to make better decisions on where to allocate funding. If you haven't seen it in the past, I would recommend looking up the latest strategic intelligence assessment of the Mid-Sussex Partnership. There is lots to learn about our district in there. Finally, for me, and I'm sure for many of you, it's been AGM season of late, and also for many organisations across the district. Two AGMs that I found especially valuable were Citizens Advice, which the chairman has already mentioned that he attended, and Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action. And both these organisations are people and places that we work with and financially support. Citizens Advice provides access to financial support to reduce debt and personal and family crisis. Recent data shows that there has been a 23% increase in advice on debt issues, and the numbers of people coming to Citizens Advice to ask for help managing household bills has grown by over 50%. At the West Sussex Citizens Advice AGM, the Trussell Trust were the keynote speaker. Over the last few years, I think for many of us, we've noticed that the existence of food banks has become normalised. The Trussell Trust have the aspiration to make themselves as an organisation redundant. They want to create a society where no one is in food crisis. Whilst many of us may already to give to food banks and pantries, I believe that we should all be working towards living in a society where this is no longer needed. And then on to the Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action AGM. Last week, I enjoyed catching up with a number of friendly faces, including former councillor Norman Webster, who used to look after this community's portfolio. Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action does an incredible job of helping our many voluntary groups and volunteers. The service builds capacity in the community voluntary sector, promotes social action through volunteering, and empowers communities to collectively voice and influence decisions that impact on their lives. The service also delivers benefits to the wider economy, supports people in maintaining their mental health and well-being with positive outcomes for the wider health and social care system. At the AGM, MUSVA, or Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action, announced that they will be changing their name next year. So look out for Community People, a name that really captures the brilliant work that they do. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Councillor Bennett? Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett, Chairman. Can I ask, are you aware of how many rough sleepers we have in the district at the moment and what provision is being made to support them over this holiday period?
Thank you, Councillor Prescott. I don't have a number to hand, and it would be wrong for me to guess that number, I think, because it's quite a sensitive matter, but I'm very happy to get you a written response.
See no other questions? No? Right, thank you, Councillor Bennett. We now move on to Cabinet Member for Finance, Revenues and Benefits, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start with the budget. Since the last council, officers have been working hard on developing the corporate plan and budget, which is now, as of yesterday, with members for the 6-week consultation period. I would like to thank officers across the council for their hard work putting this together in such challenging financial times. Members will have noticed and hopefully appreciate a new presentation with more explanation. I also wish to thank the cross-party working group that has come together to recommend this balanced budget. We will all understand that it has not been an easy task to seek a consensus that both meets our financial challenges whilst also continuing to deliver for our residents. I would also like to thank everyone in advance for the work that we will all play a role in before we meet in this chamber in February to set our budget. Moving on to Clare Hall. This has also been a busy period with our work on Clare Hall. Having committed to seeking proposals from the community, I am pleased to report that we have had much engagement and several proposals have been received. In response, we have brought together an independent technical panel that will now begin to consider these proposals and aim to meet with groups early in the new year. They will report their findings to the recently formed cross-party executive steering group for this project, who I thank for their work so far and in anticipation of what is to follow. We will continue to update the community on our engagement hub. Thank you. I welcome any questions.
Right, any questions for Councillor Cook? No, see none. Right, thank you, Councillor Cook. We move on to the Cabinet Member for Leisure and Customer Services, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you. First off, I would like to thank residents and the council for your patience as we've progressed appointing a new partner for our innovative Green Spaces contract. I can assure you that the frustration faced by many of you and our residents about the quality of the services over the past months has been felt painfully through the officer community here at the council too. And I thank them specifically for navigating our way safely through the public procurement process. But now we look forward, and from January we have our new operator in place, Glendale, who are ready and raring to go. The service will start with focus on the priorities and will ramp up over the weeks and months, and the council is sharing information with the parishes and town councils and will engage with them in the new year, and will also brief councillors on the mobilisation plans as the process gains momentum. I'm pleased to report that this week the Centre for Outdoor Sports planning application has reached a new milestone, and it was submitted and will be visible on the planning portal. After substantial design review work with Homes England and pre-application advice, we're comfortable the project remains broadly on schedule, and with planning approval hopefully early in 2024, we'll be able to achieve getting contractors on site at the right time to enable the season-led preparatory works. And finally, I'd just like to remind residents and the council that, this being the season of Christmas and goodwill, there will be changes to our waste collection days. It was very strange filming Christmas messages in Hurstpit Point in October, but the season is now upon us, and please remember to have your bin outside your property at 7 o'clock on the designated day to help our colleagues in the waste collection area get their rounds completed as successfully as possible. Thank you.
Are there any questions to Councillor Hobbs? Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Yep, I've gone red. I've got 3 questions for you, so don't faint. I'm the Ward Councillor for Turners Hill. I'd like you to pass on your thanks to the outgoing team who cleared the land from Mount Lane towards Down East Street, that is. It was a 2-part exercise. They cut the grass, which was fine, but they should have widened the grass, sort of encroached onto the footpath. If you could send Glendale down, that would be fantastic early in the year, because I do have a lot of residents who live down at the park with public transport as good as it is, not. They walk down there and they can't. So that's that one question. Second question is, and I understand there have been issues. When I heard that portfolio, I used to hate these words coming out of somebody's mouth, poo bins. They're not actually being picked up as well as they could be. And when they are told to be picked up, in my own village, we pay for that service, as do a lot of other villages pay for that service, maybe not in the towns, but the villages pay for that service. So they expect a service, and the service, we say, has been lacking. So if you could, potentially, because it is on our recreation ground, and we have a lot of children, because they go past that overflowing poo bin to the playgrounds. So they do that. So there's that. Third one, I haven't actually seen for a good few months, bearing in mind it has been raining a lot, street cleansing. The B2036 from junction 10A right through to Cookfield was on the designated list to be street picked up litter picked, and I haven't seen anybody on there for a long, long time. Could you assure me and the rest of the chamber that Serco are doing that, because that was part of the agreement and part of their service standard? Thank you.
Okay, call on Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh, for your observations and questions. I don't have the answers, obviously, to hand.
Happy to take a written report. Could you circulate it amongst the council?
Of course, no problem at all. I can confirm that street cleaning is, of course, going ahead generally, but we'll make sure that I get you a written report specifically on the B2036. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carvalho.
Thank you, Chairman. My question concerns the ash dieback programme. One of the consequences of removing the trees has revealed a lot of debris, which has included broken glass in the Linfield Eastern Reserve. I just want to be reassured that lessons have been learned from that, so that when you do future dieback programmes in other parts of the district, that provision, a financial provision, will be made to include a clean-up immediately after the dieback programme has been completed, because there's obviously been a long time frame between that original dieback removal and then the clean-up.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, Councillor Cavallo, for your question. I think that the council did an exceptional job in the run-up to the ash dieback project at Linfield. The communication, I think, was excellent, and the council officers should be commended for their work in communicating the process and that the work was to be done. I think the situation at Linfield was quite specific. It's a specific problem because the trees have grown up over time on effectively a waste on a waste can't think of the word dumping site. Thank you. Obviously the removal of the trees has exposed that waste. I know that the officers have done a lot of work looking retrospectively at the lessons learned from what is their first big ash dieback project, and we've asked for a report as to how we plan to take the future projects forward. It is unfortunate, of course, but ash dieback is in amongst our trees, and it is something that we have to deal with as any responsible. The only responsible thing to do is that we deal with it. But lessons will have been learned, have definitely been learned, and yes, a plan is in place.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hobbs, for your update. Great relief on the green contract. Can I just ask, as well as the parish councils, could you please put East Grinstead Sports Council, who I know that you met back in the summer, their chairman Bob Shelley, who's watching online, I think, this evening, very keen to meet up and hear a briefing from you. The Sports Council next meeting is on Thursday, the 11th of January, in case you might be free, because I'm sure he'll invite you. But good news, but the dialogue with the sports clubs will be great if you can. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Yes, thank you for your question. I know that our director with responsibility for that area has been in contact, particularly with Mr. Shelley, but I'll make sure that now the information is publicly available, I'll contact Mr. Shelley and any similar sports council operations, any sports councils that we have in other areas with whom we're in communication.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask, as in regard to dog bins, over the last few months we've had antisocial behaviour that's been extremely dangerous, where they actually put something in the bins that have actually exploded them for people that are using the parks, walking dogs, children, etc. Could I just ask, is this behaviour toned down, or obviously has it been investigated? Because it's taking away the dog bins, but it's an extremely dangerous form of antisocial behaviour that's carrying out in the town. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you for your question. I will look to get you a written report. Obviously don't have the details of how many dog bins we've lost in this way at this point. It has obviously been fireworks season, and I guess that's been the cause of the problem. But we will get you something, a written report to you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if a Cabinet member could put a little bit of meat on the proposed briefings to members and also to parishes and towns in relation to the new Green Spaces contract. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you for your question. A briefing has been sent round to each of the leaders in the yesterday, I believe. So that should have been received. If it hasn't been, please let us know, and I'll arrange to get a copy to you.
Thank you. I've got no more questions. Right, thank you. So we'll move on to the last Cabinet member for Sustainable Economy and Housing, Councillor Gibson.
Good evening, councillors. I realise that I'm the last obstacle between yourselves and the mince pies, but I've had a quiet evening and I don't intend to restrict myself in terms of the number of points I want to make. Taking the sustainable economy part of my portfolio first, councillors will recall that our sustainable economy strategy focuses on 3 themes. I should give you a test on this: people, place and partnerships, with the objectives of within each theme mapping onto the 17 UN Sustainability Development Goals. So I thought this evening I would talk just about the people theme, and that's concerned with investment in people and skills, in particular those needed for the challenges of a low carbon economy. So the recent things that we've done in that respect: a second carbon literacy training day for staff, and once again I'd encourage any councillors who haven't completed this course to do so. I think as individuals we all need to consider what changes we should be making, perhaps to follow the leadership of COP28 on reducing the use of fossil fuels. The West Sussex Grow Digital Training for Businesses returns in the new year with a further series of day-long workshops providing training and one-to-one mentoring for SMEs to improve their use of social media, digital marketing, online selling and smarter working. Now, the Prime Minister may be pleased with the overall performance of students in England, but I personally was disappointed to see that our scores for science had dropped in the latest international comparisons published by PISA. So it's great that we are sponsoring activities which might go some way to correcting that. We've already heard about this year's Mid-Sussex STEM Challenge, which was launched in October and has attracted entries from 9 secondary schools who are asked to design and build a hovercraft. Now, each school is partnered with a STEM ambassador from a local business, and their role is to explain how STEM skills bring innovation into product development and improvement. But the highlight for me in November was the Teen Tech Festival at the Amex Stadium, involving students from around 30 schools across Sussex, and that included Imberhorn and Woodland Meads from our own district. There was an exhibition space featuring hands-on demonstration from 40 or so of the more tech-savvy employers, and that included Roche, Universal Quantum and Continental Engineering. I'll even give a mention to Thakenham, who presented their work on energy-efficient homes. Talking to the students after, ahead of the final plenary session, it was clear that projects involving the use of virtual reality headsets attracted the most interest, and that is great news for us because, of course, we have a long history of developing simulators in Burgess Hill through rediffusion to CAE. Moving on to housing. Cost of living pressures are increasing, with energy costs rising again in the new year, and the Council is able to support vulnerable households in need of one-off help with white goods, food or energy costs through grants from the Housing Support Fund. So far, the Council has helped 65 households with grants totalling £8,000, and details of the eligibility and how to apply are on the Council's website. I just want to pay tribute to the hard work of the housing team. Clearly we have a lot of pressure at the moment on temporary accommodation, and they are doing an excellent job in that area. And finally, the Deputy Leader and I will be meeting with senior staff from one of our major housing associations in January And I will be stressing how important it is that best use is made of the affordable housing stock in the district. Thank you.
Do you have any questions to Councillor Gibson? Councillor Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask, is it Clarion that you're meeting? Please, because I've got a specific question for that, if it is that one.
We should talk outside the meeting.
Well, I think actually, the membership would probably like to know that we've got people in the district who want to downsize, but Clarion, being Clarion, don't seem to want to engage the people who want to downsize to smaller units. So perhaps we could take it out, but I do think a written answer to the whole, because we've all got issues in our wards, and you know who I'm talking about, so thank you.
I'm happy to give a written answer and circulate it on that. I would also say that I'm aware of exactly the reverse circumstance in which households under pressure are desperate to move upwards, and it's entirely relevant that I think that we've got 2 5-bed properties and only 124 4-bed properties in the entire district, and that puts an awful lot of pressure on. So whatever we can do to that, that is exactly the sort of management thing that we will be discussing with the major housing provider that we're seeking to meet, and I would be happy to take points from any councillor on that point. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. On the same subject, Clarion Housing, yes, the reverse, with bungalows being used to house young, fully bodied people when they have elderly neighbours, incidentally, who, by the same housing association, were initially charged for a lift in a bungalow, which we got rescinded. But it does seem a shame that it's a sheltered housing site, and it's being used to house a range of people. I just wonder, when it was originally promised for disabled and elderly people. So I'm sure I can give you the details afterwards, but I think there's a long list of issues to take up with Clarion, not least the ongoing issues with repairs that we all have in our postbags. And indeed, the voids period, where approaching Christmas, the house just opposite me has been vacant since last Christmas when it was flooded, either because of issues with repairs, which weren't conducted until the summer, and since then it has remained vacant. And it just seems disappointing that the voids, the vacancies, cannot be filled in good order. Thank you.
I can only agree with Councillor Hicks on that point. I would very much welcome receiving details, and in fact receiving details from anybody. I don't think this is a problem which is restricted to one particular housing provider. I think it's far wider than that. And I think that I am very keen that we make best use of the housing stock that is available, and really make sure that we understand and drive that forward as far as we can. I recommend, if you haven't found your way to it, that you recommend the homeless and rough sleeping strategy. The two things go together. That's certainly worth a read in terms of the issues within that. And that is obviously due to be reviewed within the term of this council. So we will obviously return to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this to Councillor Gibson? No, thank you. So now we now move on to agenda item 12, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Due notice of which has been given. I have received none. At this point, I would like to thank the Council for what has been a very busy programme this evening, and the way it's gone satisfactorily. I therefore close the meeting and remind you to be invited to refreshments after this meeting. So if you can remain in your seats until the live stream finishes,